Welcome back to my channel. Here I just discuss life and the things I've been through and things I've noticed. So here I go. One of the things that I noticed with abusive parents um, is that they love to recruit people to abuse their children. Um, a pattern that I noticed a lot of childhood trauma survivors and myself. Um, they will believe every story that is negative about their child, the one that they're abusing, and they intentionally withhold information so that you can go out into the world ignorant, without boundaries, without skills to like recognize red flags or even green flags. Um, they will send you out into the world desperate for the things that they're not providing for you, like connection, affection, intimacy, those things. Um, and what that does is create additional trauma, right? So that is one of the reasons why a lot of childhood trauma survivors end up with people like their parents or end up in friendships where they're being mistreated or used. Um, Abusive parents, they stop at nothing to destroy their children's lives and then weaponize their privilege as an adult to recruit additional adults and children to abuse their child. And I don't give a fuck about parents who choose to abuse their children. They are more than likely they've been abused themselves. And so they've developed these maladaptive skills to cope with that abuse. Um, an abuser that I know, one of my relatives, she was abused. Well, my aunt, my aunt is a certified child abuser, like most of the people in my family. It's just a cycle of abuse that just keeps going on and on and on. And the thing is that I think two things play into it: her not being educated, so not learning skills, pattern recognition, things like that. And then also the trauma that she endured, not only from like my grandmother, my grandparents, and also, her being in domestic partnerships that were very abusive. Um, but one thing that, when you are a childhood trauma survivor, like if you don't intentionally grow and elevate, you stay stunted, like in a childlike state. And that was one thing I noticed about all abusers, particularly the ones in my family. Like they are very childish, like they have very childish coping skills, finger sucking, tantrums, all of this shit, because they're still stunted, but they have the privilege and the body of a fucking adult, but they are a child, a broken, disconnected child with no emotional or social skills. Or they're very, very poor, or they are manipulative or, engage in maladaptive behaviors to get what they want. But with my aunt and with my father, they both put their mothers who were abusive on like these high pedestals, and they completely discount the abuse. My grandmother, she, when she was alive, she did take care of me. And I do believe like my grandmother did love me. And I do believe that she wanted redemption, But my grandmother had 5 children, and all of her children have something, like it's just something like something that lets you know that they were not raised by a good mother. So obviously, my uncle, he was in prison. My aunt was groomed, you know, in a relationship with an older man. Don't really, she's disconnected from our relatives. And then my mother had the substance use and the mental illness. My aunt, the one I'm talking about after my mother, mental illness, you know. And then my uncle, mentally ill. Well, he's not younger than me, but out of my mom's siblings, mentally ill. Um, but my aunt, she puts my grandmother on such a high pedestal. And it's like that's the dysfunctional, distorted, childlike thinking, because if she had to really work through her trauma, she wouldn't say that my grandmother was a good mother. Like, it is very evident that my grandmother wasn't a good mother. And even though, like, adults, they made their own decisions. But like I said, my mother and my mother and her 2 sisters, they were all groomed by older men. Like, I'm sure they all have a old man story. My father groomed my mother. My aunt was groomed by, her husband that she was married to for 20 plus years. And, my other aunt, I'm sure she has a similar story. And then obviously my uncle went to prison for 25 years. And then my other uncle is mentally ill at this point. So there's evidence that my grandmother was not a good mother, nor was my grandfather. No shade to them at all. Like I said, I feel like out of all the people in my family, I do know that my grandparents did love me. But she just never took my grandmother off that pedestal. And even though my grandmother literally took her and dropped her off, back in the 80s and the 70s, you could just like drop your kids off and like get them sent to foster care, and that's what she did with my aunt. And my aunt, she wants to hold on to this reality that's not true, and everything that comes against it, because she doesn't want to grow and elevate. She don't have the skills and she don't have the desire to. She acts like a child when she don't get her way, and that is the most common theme I've noticed with abusers. They're all like very, very childlike, abusing people, starting rumors, bullying, harassing, stalking, you know, revenge porn, any type of way that you can abuse a person. That is childish as fuck. You know what I'm saying? Like, when you think about it, like revenge porn, it's like you and this person shared this intimate moment, and yeah, it may have been just casual and y'all had no strings attached, but at the end of the day, you shared an intimate moment with a person who consented or not consented to the recording of this thing, because y'all are adults, and if y'all want to record something and play it back, that's up to you. But it is very childlike and abusive to share it and send it and all this other stuff. I remember when I was in college, there was this girl, um, she was in a sorority, and she had sex with one of the gentlemen in a fraternity. And now I didn't see this video, but so many people that I knew saw it. And like, he would literally like have, his laptop, and then he'd be like, oh, let me show you something. And, he would be showing her, whatever. And then I've heard similar stories of, like this is in Flint, like young ladies, while we're in our 20s, on camera, and then guys just showing it all around. And it's like, you want to be down so bad, like a fucking kid. Like you want to be accepted so bad that you went and did some abusive shit. You did some shit. Like uh, uh. Maybe you're mad because you got rejected, or maybe you're mad because she fucked you good and then was like, see you later. And then you're like, oh, well, I still got this video. I'm gonna show this video. And then you go and try to ruin her life, or my favorite is when guys go around telling, kiss and tell, and that's abusive. It's abusive. And I don't know. I'm just tired of abusive people. I'm tired of insecure people. I'm just tired of it. I really am. And then another thing I quickly want to talk about. I'm not one really to talk to when I had friends, to talk to them about like things that go on in my life, because most of the time people just don't understand. But I feel like maybe they do, and maybe they are just using this opportunity to try to air out some hidden grievance, hidden animosity towards me. So I was talking to one of my friends about a situation that was going on at work. And this friend in particular, I already knew based on our history that there was not much that her and I could talk about. Like, yeah, she could come to me and talk to me about all her little stuff or whatever, but she already showed me that she doesn't have the mental capacity to take in information and to talk to somebody who has differing viewpoints. And so, at one point I was like, it's just differences, but it's like deep down inside, I was tired of it. And so I was telling her about the situation at work after already censoring myself, not sharing things with her. Like, it got to the point to where, like, I would send her like funny stuff like on Instagram or whatever, and it would be just like, oh, she wouldn't get the joke or something like that, and I even stopped sending, my little things, because it's like, I can't talk to you about shit. Like, I can't talk to you about anything. Like, you're just so wrapped up into your world, which is fine. And so, anyway, I was talking to her about the situation at work. Now, I already had it handled. Like, I already knew what I was gonna do. I already knew what I had to do. Whatever. But anyway, I'm talking to her about it. Now, it was kind of funny, kind of crazy, quote unquote, whatever. But anyway, she decides to tell me, oh, you need to stop talking to this person, yada, yada, yada. And, this is the last time I want to hear about this. You know what you need to do. Don't be letting her do this and do that. Now, this is a person that, like I said, I already know that I'm about to cut this person off. Like, actually, I've already done it. Like, I'm not even talking to the person. You know, say I just didn't announce it to that person. Like, I just didn't have like a sit down conversation. Be like, oh, I think that we shouldn't, text each other or call each other because of whatever. Like, I just stopped talking to her because it just really wasn't nothing I could do. And, the things that she kept bringing to me was just super duper stressful. And then another boundary that I have is that I don't befriend women who stay in abusive relationships when they don't have to. I'm not talking about women who are married or have children or have businesses with their spouse and, they have to work through things because, you know, even though you're leaving for your safety, that legal shit will catch up to you. So, whatever. But this person had no reason to be connected to the person that she was connected to. They had no children, they had no businesses, they didn't even own a home together. Like, they had nothing legally binding them to where, like, if she just dipped out, she would be screwed. So to me, I just be feeling like, why willingly go through getting your ass beat or getting put down or getting sexually assaulted on a regular with somebody who you could just literally leave and your life is not going to be impacted. You're not going to have creditors calling. You're not going to have the police coming after you. You're not going to be summoned or subpoenaed to court because of something. Like, I don't know, but whatever. So anyway, I already knew what I was going to do with this person, but I just never understood, like, it just always bothered me, like, why did this friend have this approach with me? And it's like, at this point, her and I had been friends for like years. So you have seen me literally drop off friends. Like, I stopped talking to this person, or me and this person fell out, or this person was moving weird. And so I got out the way. Like, I don't let people irritate the fuck out of me. I don't let people keep me in situations. I don't do that type of stuff. So it's like, why the fuck did you say that? And then another time we were talking, and so this is when she was living here in Florida, and she was talking to me about her neighbor who was walking around barefoot. And she was like, I don't know why my neighbors always walk around barefoot or whatever. So this is around the time, like, I don't think I was working, or I was about to stop working or whatever. So I had just like discovered grounding, stuff like that, like literal putting your feet in the ground and meditating, connecting to nature, all of that. So I was telling her, I was like, oh, because she was like, she do it every time. She walks around barefoot all the time. And I was like, oh, like she's probably grounding, like, but then I said like, oh, like maybe she shouldn't do it around the neighborhood. Like maybe she should like do it in her grass, or at a spot, where she don't risk some crawling up her feet and in between her toes or something. So this friend decided that she was gonna take what I said as if she said it. And that's one thing that really irritates the fuck out of me. But anyway, and I'm like, yeah, okay. Like, so what? And then another thing, like I said, she doesn't have the capacity to talk to people who think differently or believe differently that she do, even though she say she does. But her behavior and her patterns have proven she's not. She stopped communicating with a friend of hers that they've been friends for years because of politics. I feel like, if a person can say, oh, I don't know who the Democrat is, whoever it is at the time. I'm pro Bernie, Elizabeth Warren, Joe Biden, but anytime, you know, people just demonize the other party, they're both shit, politics is shit. But she has a problem with people who don't believe the same thing that she believes, and whatever. So I'm one. I believe that there needs to be like a complete overhaul of the system. I think it should just be redone, gutted, and we, the people, need to take the power back. I do not believe that the way that we engage in politics is helpful because, yes, people are very successful and make money and all this other stuff, but you cannot ignore homelessness. You cannot ignore lack of jobs. You cannot ignore the automation of entry-level positions. You cannot ignore systemic discrimination, ableism, racism, ageism, all of these things. You cannot ignore the fact that not everybody has an equal opportunity and not everybody has access or is even treated with equity, like giving them the things that that specific person need to succeed. We cannot ignore incarceration, substance use, this mental health shit. We just cannot ignore all these children going missing, being hurt, and all of that. And the same thing that's always told us: vote, 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 vote. And then it's like people go out and they vote and they vote and they vote. And we, the people, still continue to struggle. And no, I'm not struggling, and no, my children aren't struggling. You know what I'm saying? And there are a lot of people who are not, but there are a lot of people who are. And we cannot ignore the fact that there's no middle ground. Like the middle ground is slimming down, and it's either the haves or the have-nots. And it's like, we just can't keep ignoring that. And it doesn't matter who's in office, the agenda still goes on. Like I said, complete and utter destruction of we the people. And you can't say, oh, because I'm a Democrat, I'm the right party, we're ethical, we're this and we're that. Because said the Democrat run states and cities, I don't know. I'm not sure. No, I'm not saying, oh, be a Republican, but it's like, let's call it all out. So anyway, that's my stance. And as her friend, I allow her to say whatever she want to say. You're pro Joe Biden, you were pro Kamala, good for you. But if we're talking, like, then I'm going to talk. And then it's like shut down, quiet. And then one time she uploaded, now this was after we were having a discussion about how I feel about politics and about the way that we engage with politics. These people who are politicking us, making these decisions that we have to face the ramifications for. I don't know. So anyway, her and I were talking, and then she uploaded on her Instagram stories one day. If you decide not to vote, then you shouldn't have any say in politics. And it's like, honey, I don't know what the fuck, you are on, but it's like that's such a lazy ass way of saying I can't handle rigorous discourse about politics. I want to take my clips that I hear from CNN and all these other news stations, like, until you've actually worked with people, studied policies like the disability, Social Security, the things that impact people, until you've been boots on the ground with people, you can't discredit my stance. You just can't, like, because I'm pulling from my lived experience, historical data, talking to people who are really in this shit, and it's just like, now, whatever the case may be, we have enough capacity in our society to where there should be no reason why it's so many people homeless. We have the capacity and the means to feed everybody. We have the capacity and the means to make sure everybody have access to equal health care. I'm not saying whatever, but I'm saying we have it, right? Until you talk to people who've been gaslit by physicians and dealing with that whole insurance thing, homeowners insurance, car insurance, until you've seen it firsthand, like, you can't tell me that I'm coming at this half-cocked. I'm not. I'm not trying to be like a contrarian, but like, I'm just being realistic here. And I'm just tired of having to filter myself because someone else's poor capacity to have conversation, respectful dialogue where we're disagreeing with each other, but we're holding the space and like curious about the disagreement. And it's like, I just I can't deal with that. I can't deal with a person who is just so poor. And then the last thing, this person is mean as fuck. Okay. Now, I'm mean. I am mean, but it's usually after, you know, me being patient and kind and understanding. And then it's like, if we're not getting anywhere, like, I'm about to be mean. So, over the course of our friendship, I noticed that she was like very, very nasty to like her friends and stuff like that. Um, just just really mean. And I don't know. I have, you know, lots of stories and experiences from mean ass friends, so I don't have time for it. But anyway, this is just me rambling or talking about my life or things I've experienced. Have a good day.